Hello there. Welcome to another talk. And this talk is called The Gates to Heaven is Within Yourself. And that's exactly what it is. If you're, quite new to my stuff, or just found my website or what have you, what happened to me was an unexpected spiritual awakening. Just under 10 years ago, I was 24 at the time, 33 now, and that's why I know that it's all within yourself. And that awakening happened, at the point I just sat down one day and had enough. I realised that, and this is what happens when you awaken, because the truth of the matter is, no one gives a shit about you. And this is the realisation that happens in awakening. You realise that they don't care about you because no one cared about them, and by you being bitter and holding on to this, you're just going to carry on this thing. And so it gets to a point where, the way it was for me was I sat down and I had it, and it was like I was seeing myself in the future. Some people might call this remote viewing, but remote viewing is a different subject. But nothing is real, So remote viewing is everything's imagination. But it was a moment where I was like getting insight into myself in the future in that little moment, but I really meant it. And then all of a sudden things started to change. I started to go through this awakening, didn't know what the hell was happening. And what pushed me into that moment of having enough was from the moment I arrived in this planet, I was just, all I saw was people basically that weren't very nice. And it got to a point at the age of 24 where I just sat down and had enough. And like Eckhart Tolle, when he does talks, he says that awakening is when you just can't handle it anymore. And so it's like you've letting God take over, kind of thing. And that's why the gates to heaven is within yourself. It's all within you, because you're not even a person. You're not a person. Everything must come from nothing at some stage. And nothingness is all of infinity. That means that there are no separate people. It means that everything's the same infinity. That's what Osho meant when he once said that a life doesn't need an outside force to create it. It means that you are, like quantum means continuum. It means continuum of everything else, right? A lot of people talk about quantum, but they don't even know what it means. Like my dad's a hypnotherapist, and he talks about Dolores Cannon does. What Dolores Cannon was talking about was where everything comes from. And my dad's done a hypnotherapy course, but she is a hypnotherapist, or was when she was alive, but she was far more than that. She had no way of knowing all that information. And so my dad talks about her in context to her hypnotherapy, but my point is that she was talking about the same thing I'm talking about. My dad, my mum as well, none of my family have ever had a spiritual awakening. I was the only one. It probably surprised them in a way, because the most spiritual one was supposed to be my mum, and she never had a spiritual awakening. They didn't even know what it was until I started talking about it. So, but it doesn't mean that, like I was saying a moment ago, it doesn't mean that I'm better than them. It just means that I decided to wake up, because, like I say, there can't be any better or worse, because everything comes from the same source that Dolores Cannon talks about, Eckhart Tolle talks about, David Icke, myself. It's the same source, and that's what heaven is. Near-death experiencers say that, that there's a spirit world, but then there's heaven. Heaven is where the near-death experiencers say that you go and you meet your relatives from other lives, from all different lives, and if you pass the test, you get to stay there. If you don't, you won't even get there. But how you develop that heaven, what is that heaven, that place, heaven? Well, when people die, they say everything is energy. That's what everything is. It's just different energies. And it's the same infinity, because everything has to come from nothing. Meaning that the heaven is within you. There is no separate place. Or even people, when they die, they say that when they died, near-death experiencers say that there was no distance. Because this is a physical reality, but it's not actually physical. Like, if you believe in the simulation theory, many scientists believe in the simulation theory. And when you die, it's just an extension of that simulation theory. And the simulation, the power from it, comes from a supercomputer, which doesn't actually exist anywhere. We look at space, but that's just a perception. Everything comes from nothing. There can't be a place within nothing. There can just be awareness. That's all we are, really, just awareness, and the only thing that's real is the present moment. And that's where heaven is. When you go within yourself, you're present all of a sudden. When you're present, you're going within yourself. So that's how you access heaven. Because even if you get to heaven in death, if you've done all the right things, you can only do the right things when you're going within yourself, because that's when you're healing. And the more you heal, the more you prepare yourself. Because if you go to a heaven, the place heaven, when you die, you're not going to fit in if you're not in tune with those people. Right? It's obviously going to be a more evolved place. So you've got to prepare yourself for that. So that's why you have to go within. You have to go within, you have to do healing. You have to have a spiritual awakening. This is what, like I said earlier, this is what happened to me. I had an unexpected spiritual awakening. And I know the reason I had it. The reason I had it was to give it to other people, so that it's not unexpected, so not traumatic to them. I believe my awakening came from trauma, and it was trauma that pushed me into it. But the whole point of that trauma was so that you wouldn't have to face it, so that you can awaken in a better way and face your trauma in a more easy way. But it is true, even the HeartMath Institute has scientifically proven that you can change your entire health by changing your thoughts and feelings. This is heart-based living. That's the connection to heaven. Within the heart is a tiny space, and that tiny space is the doorway into heaven. And what you're tapping into, well, you're tapping into an item called Oversoul. This is the item. When you have when I had the spiritual awakening, all of a sudden it wasn't a voice, but a strong, as David Icke calls it, a thought form. It was like that, and that's called Oversoul. Oversoul is the item between the physical you and the heaven you. There's a version of yourself that lives in heaven, and there's a version of you that lives on earth. And you communicate. Oversoul is within the present moment. As soon as you're present, you'll start getting insights, understandings, different ideas, inspirational ideas. This is what Nikola Tesla spoke about. Solitude and being alone. Nikola Tesla said, be alone, that is the secret to invention. Albert Einstein used to sit in solitude, and that's where he used to get his ideas from. But that's because you're interacting with Oversoul. And this is how we get DNA activations. DNA activations, you can't correct your DNA properly and get DNA activations until you're starting to live in the present moment, because otherwise Oversoul can only communicate with you in the present moment. If you're not present, it can't do it. Like, I take supplements and vitamins, but I know that stuff is a tool, but it's useless if you're in the wrong type of awareness. Right? So it's all about going within yourself, and as soon as you're within, you're in the present moment, and then you start to heal. And what you're doing is you're aligning with Source, which is heaven, and that's what you're doing. And then you're preparing your own self to go to heaven when you die. That's what we all have the choice to do, but it's up to us to do that, right? You know, if you're being bitter towards people, you're accusing people of doing things to you, then all you're doing is you're creating karma. A lot of people don't know what karma is. They think if someone does them wrong, then that's karma. This is a complete delusional perception of karma. Karma is what you create based on your feelings, right? If you're holding on to negative emotions, that's what karma is. And so that's what karma is. And so it's all about going within yourself. I like essential oils. I like ylang ylang. That works at 320 megahertz, which is the love frequency, which is the source, heaven. And that kills cancers. Scientifically proven that 320 megahertz kills cancers. The essential oils, ylang ylang especially. I've not tried any others. Just that one. But that's the one I want to stay with. You know, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But that's what regarding spiritual awakening, that's what's happening when you have a spiritual awakening. You're interacting with that item called Oversoul. Some people believe that when you have a spiritual awakening, that I had a rebirthing experience when I had a spiritual awakening, and I was being spoken to. I say spoken to, but it was like thought. It was like ideas were coming into my awareness, pouring through from Oversoul. And I was being told that I was being reborn, and my heart was racing like someone being reborn, or someone being born, because babies' heart rates are very high. And I was being told, the awareness you're in is before you were born. And the reason I think this had to happen was because of the awakening. But like I was saying a minute ago, some people believe that Christ has entered your body. This relates to Christmas. When you have a rebirthing experience during a spiritual awakening. I would say that it's true in a way, but not entering you as a person, because what is Christ? Well, Christ, whether you believe he is real or not, it's a state of awareness. The Christ story is someone going through an ascension process, and the ascension level is just love, heaven, source, forgiveness. So it's symbolic, that it's true in a symbolic way. And also when you start looking in symbolic terms to things, that's when you start going through your ascension process. Also, that's another thing that happened. But it doesn't mean that I'm better than anyone, like I say, because there is no me. in this awakening, I realized my perception started to change. I started to realize that everything is the same awareness. It's the same nothingness. Meaning same infinite awareness, so there's no separation, so there is no Sean, there is no me. What we are doing is we are the same consciousness having different experiences within the same infinite consciousness. And this is not stuff I'm repeating, this is stuff that I started to perceive during awakening. I remember being in a cafe around earlier in my awakening, and everything was becoming like a mirror. You know, and what was happening is in the awakening you've got chakras and third eyes. That's awakening in the awakening process. And that's why you're starting to perceive different things. Now, what did I do? Well, like I said at the start of this talk, it was just a moment of pure presence that manifested the awakening. I had enough. And that's all I did, and you just let that lead the way. But when you're present, you're going within. When you're going within, you're present. So that's why the gates to heaven is within yourself. I'm not religious, but I've heard that other religious people that they made religions from said this. Jesus Christ apparently said the kingdom of God is within you. There was other people as well, but what it means is, it means that these people knew the way. By bowing to them, that's not going to save us. What's going to save us is we have to awaken. We need to ascend past the third dimension. If we don't, we just recycle back onto Earth. Reincarnation is a trap, but it's also a lesson. That's why you be reincarnated. It's a lesson. You have to learn your lessons again. And I recently, over a month and a half ago, I contacted 2 women from my past, and I've said this before and just briefly mentioned this. And I reached a point where I wasn't holding on to anything negative, so that's why I wanted to do that. And, you know, so I'm no longer holding on to them or anything negative. What they're doing is up to them. But if for example, let's just say they were holding on to something negative, that's not my problem anymore, because I've let go of that. Because I'm not wanting to come back here, unless there was a great contribution I could make again, like an awakening path. Maybe I'd consider that. But the reason I couldn't contact them before, because I was holding on to them in a way. The reason I was able to contact them is because I let go. I know that you know, because before I just couldn't do it. I was holding on to too much stuff. But that's the power of going within. This is what I do all the time. I do this all the time. When I'm doing dishes or I'm washing up, whatever I'm doing, it's always a meditation. I'm in ever since the spiritual awakening, because like I say, the oversoul. Now the oversoul is just the present moment. Just before I end this talk, I just want to say that I'm currently working on a course. I want to give people, or try to create, my awakening in the way I went through it. And I just thought I'd mention that, but keep checking my website. Go on the donations, and there's a page on there that is about donations and also things that I'm selling, or things you can buy. So I'm wanting to create a course that is my awakening, the way I went through it. A course or a audio book, something that people can buy, because it's worth. I mean, I give a lot of my stuff for free, but I think that a course is definitely worth buying, because people travel all around all around the planet to try and get rich people, very wealthy, financially wealthy people, travel all around the globe to try and get an awakening, because it is the golden ticket. And I want to give this in a course. Now, the way if being present doesn't awaken you, you think it's not. Well, you can pay for one of my courses. And I'm going to charge a lot cheaper than what you would be for a standard Reiki course. And Reiki isn't a spiritual awakening. And the best people to go to regarding spiritual awakening is those that have had the spiritual awakenings. The awakening is the source where all life comes from. And that's the thing. If it's not a spiritual awakening, then what's the point? And this is the way that the money people are. They will travel all around the planet, pay the money, and to try and go to different spiritual locations. Sedona, Arizona, that's one place that they go. That a lot of people have had spiritual awakenings there. And because it's the awakening is like, it is the golden ticket to heaven, and that's why I've decided to start working on a course that I want to give people a lot cheaper than you would be for a standard Reiki course. Because ultimately it's the awakening that connects you. What the awakening does is we've got a barrier. Before I end this talk, I just want to say this. We've got a barrier that is programmed into us, but the awakening and the importance of a spiritual awakening is it breaks that barrier. Like David Icke said, when he had his awakening, it was like someone flipped the switch and then all of a sudden relentless knowledge started pouring in. So that's why the awakening is so important. And where it's coming from is, like I'm saying, heaven. That's where it's coming from. So that's why I want to do a course. I want to do a course that is based on my spiritual awakening and the way I went through it. Very similar to the way I went through it. In meditations. Ever since my awakening, I've been guided through the Oversoul, different meditation. I never done meditation before. I've got all these different meditations that I created myself that already exist. I found out later, but I didn't know that at the time. But so keep a lookout for the courses and stuff like that on my website. I'm also on Patreon, so you can, if you want to give me a donation, you can. That, all these different, I'm not a money head or anything like that, but obviously, if I want to be doing this 24/7, then you need to be able to sustain yourself. And so that's why lately, that's why I joined Patreon and making courses that people can purchase. Because this is really what my heart is set on. I want to give my whole life to this. And so I understand that I will have to get paid for it also, if I want to do that fully. But I am just going to leave it there. And like I say, for latest updates and the course that I just mentioned, or anything that you can buy, all the stuff is on my website. My website address is www.lovelightfamily.com. Thank you.